Hello again and welcome to another edition of Small Caps. I'm Peter Capsanis. Well, on the back of a sharp rise on the silver price, new Perth-based explorer Sun Silver Limited has closed its initial public offering 3 weeks ahead of schedule after raising a whopping $13 million. It means the overwhelming investor demand can now allow Sun Silver, that's ASX code SS1, focus on its Maverick Springs silver gold project in Nevada State in the United States. To help us dive deeper into the Sun Silver story, I'm joined by Executive Director Gerard O'Donovan. Gerard, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter.
So it might be the Small Caps podcast, Gerard, but there's certainly nothing small about the feat you've achieved this week. Before we get into the thick of things, in short, what is the Sun Silver story?
Yeah, so Sun Silver is a silver-focused company that is underpinned by its globally significant silver gold project in Nevada, as you mentioned earlier, and it holds a globally significant JORC-compliant resource of 292 million ounces of silver equivalent at 72.4 grams per tonne.
Yeah, all right. So I mentioned the overwhelming demand from investors for an IPO in these particular times. Are you surprised by the level of interest?
Not particularly, Peter. I think people are starting to understand that silver is a very attractive investment. It's gaining traction due to industrial demand and a number of other factors that sit outside its historical tether to gold. So it's been a great result for us, but it hasn't been a big surprise.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think? Okay. What do you think spurred on the demand? Was it the resurgent silver price? Was it the fact that, and we'll get into it shortly, about the composition of your board? You know, the global outlook. Is it the terrain where you are? I guess you'd say a combination of those things. But I guess if you had to put your finger on it, what do you think's been a key driver?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And look, the silver's demand from industrial sectors has been exponentially growing over the last 10 years. So, and specifically within solar. So silver poses the most critical risk in the build out of global solar, and there's been a lot of commitments with respect to solar. If you look at solar within the United States, the use of silver in that has grown by 330% over the last 10 years. So it's gone from 48 million ounces to 160 million ounces. And the International Energy Agency has forecast that by 2027, solar will become the most dominant form of renewable energy worldwide. And that will surpass the likes of energy derived from coal and gas. So silver is being heavily used in industrial uses, and that's been driving an exponential growth. Silver has been in a deficit for the last 4 years, and that's predominantly due to the increase of uses in solar and also the declining production of existing mines.
All right. Well, we'll get into the renewable and the solar space shortly. You've preempted one of my questions, but that's all right. Look, so for those that don't know, as I mentioned, you've closed the IPO 3 weeks ahead of schedule. You were scheduled to list in early June. You're now listing today. So that sends a pretty strong message to the broader community, doesn't it? You're here to do business, and you're here for the long haul.
Yeah, it certainly does. So we were heavily supported by investors, and as you mentioned, we've closed the IPO 3 weeks early, accepting the maximum $13 million subscription. Again, it's a testament to people's knowledge of silver and the value proposition that silver poses for investors. So really encouraging sign for us moving forward.
All right, you mentioned, I think, the level of resource. Just go over the level and volume of resource at Maverick Springs and what are its key highlights.
Yeah, so it's a very, very attractive asset. It's a globally significant project. It has a globally significant resource of 292 million ounces of silver equivalent at 72.4 grams per tonne. In pure silver terms, it holds 176 million ounces of pure silver and 1.37 million ounces of gold. So it's a silver gold asset. It's in the Carlin trend. We'll talk about Nevada in a second, but I would like to touch on the geological setting of the project. So the Carlin trend is one of the most prolific regions in the world for silver gold production. There's notable names operating in the region, such as Barrick, Kinross, Coeur, all located in Nevada. But it's amenable to low-cost mining and production due to it being hosted in carbonate rocks. So it's a really attractive project, but it also has a lot of upside potential and upside exploration potential. So we're not done with that 292 million ounces. We're going to explore further and we're going to add ounces. And we plan on doing that through a number of avenues. Number one is desktop optimization work. The historical constrained resource was calculated on pricing of $21.50 an ounce silver and $1,850 an ounce gold. So we feel there's scope for growth of that resource in the near term by applying current day economics, which reflect higher silver and gold prices. And then we'll carry out some field work, some geophysics, some geochem to inform a drill program. And that drill program will be two-pronged. One will be to upgrade the classification through infill drilling. And secondly, then it will be extensional drilling to add ounces as the resource is open along strike and at depth.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's in the Carlin trend there, but in terms of zooming out the broader Nevada state, what's fundamentally attractive about this region, Gerard?
Yeah, so Nevada is steeped in mining history. It's been voted the #1 mining jurisdiction by the Fraser Institute in 2022, and it's consistently sat within the top 3 over the last 5 years. As I mentioned, it's a region that is proven to be low cost mining. It's a mining jurisdiction. We're 85 kilometers from the town of Elko. So a fully serviced mining town. We have a water bore on site and we're quite close to power. So we're in a fantastic location that has a deep mining history. So Nevada is a fantastic jurisdiction, low risk to be operating in.
One thing I've omitted in asking you is obviously this resource calculation, etc. You've been keeping an eye on the prospect for a while. How far back does the story go in terms of this specific area?
Yeah, it's been a long process. So this has been approximately 2 years in the making. The macro thematic has been growing. We've identified the deficit in silver and the demand profile that's been growing, and we've seen similar thematics play out most recently in uranium and even before that lithium. So having a globally significant asset in the middle of what is a supply squeeze for silver is a great place to be. So it's been a while in the making, and coming to the boards now during this time is fantastic for Sun Silver.
You touched on the renewable space. There's a long-term plan here, obviously, which I guess revolves around silver and the associated industry demand. What's driving? I mean, you did touch on it, but I mean, is the link to the renewable energy space the forefront and the key driver for you and this operation moving forward?
Yes, it is. We feel, we know based on what the United States particularly has committed to with respect to solar in the United States itself, that there's a unique opportunity. So the United States has committed that by 2030, 30% of its electrical grid will come from solar, and that by 2050, they're targeting 45%. It currently sits at 3%. So when you look at silver's application within solar a bit deeper, silver makes up to 23% of the material cost of a PV cell. It's in every cell, and new technologies are only growing. So I think that answers what you're asking, in the sense that solar has a huge place to play within the renewable and the emission reduction targets moving forward, and silver is required for that solar deployment. As I mentioned earlier, silver is the critical risk associated with the global rollout of solar.
Lithium's taken up the spotlight in the last few years, so this is a chance for silver to come back and, or to come back and stake its claim, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
So your ex-Pilbara Minerals, which has gone from strength to strength in the north of WA now. Tell me about the other board members involved, Gerard.
Yeah, we've got a really strong exploration and development board. As you mentioned, I was at Pilbara Minerals for a considerable period of time, where I led up the development, commissioning, ramp up of the Pilgangoora Stage 1 lithium tantalum project. And then I also integrated the Altura asset into the broader Pilbara Minerals business. I spent time as an area manager at Rio Tinto's Winu Copper Gold project on their $1.5 billion project in the Patterson province. And I'm heavily supported by Dean Ercegovic, who's our non-executive chairman. Dean was a founding director and chief operating officer of Primero Group. Primero Group are world known for the engineering, procurement, and construction of processing plants worldwide, have completed a number of projects in North America. And rounding out the board is Nathan Marr. Nathan is a metallurgist with over 20 years project development experience, and he's constructed 2 silver plants around the world. So really strong board that has a lot of development experience. So yeah.
So do you think the makeup of the board has been a factor in the positive reaction from the investor market in the last couple of weeks?
I would hope so, but no, I think so. I think when people look at the board and its development experience and the number of, I suppose, pardon the pun, runs on the board that we have with respect to that piece of development, I would hope it has played a part in people viewing this as a good investment.
So no doubt there might have been a bit of disappointment from some potential investors and would-be shareholders on taking part in the IPO process. So should they still look at buying in once you now that you've listed? And I guess the real question is, why, Gerard? Why would mums and dads and others investors want to be part of the Sun Silver story?
Yeah, well, I think people have seen from what we outlined in the prospectus that we have a definitive plan post-listing to execute works on the ground. And I touched a little on that earlier. It consists of a number of approaches, a number of pieces. Number one, as I said, is the optimization work, followed by the field work and then the drilling. But also, we are looking at some parallel work streams with respect to silver paste studies. So silver paste is how silver is used within a PV panel. Currently, that is heavily China dependent, where over 90% of the supply chain comes from. So we're looking at those opportunities in the United States, where there's a vast amount of grant funding available, and we will investigate the opportunity to tap into that grant funding. And then also some solar generation studies. So for an investor who's looking at Sun Silver, we have a definitive plan which we're going to execute, and it's a great value proposition.
So it sounds like there could be some downstream processing and value adding in the mix.
Correct.
Depending on what happens down the track. All right, well, Gerard, great story. Congratulations on the oversubscription. And no doubt there'll be many keen eyes watching closely in the weeks and months to come. And no doubt we'll be chatting again in the near future on the next stage and phase of Sun Silver. But in the meantime, thanks very much for joining us on Small Caps today.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.